The iron gates of the arena creak open. From the shadows, a low growl rolls across the sand, deep, primal, ancient. Spectators lean forward as the beast emerges, a hulking, brindled hound, muscles coiled beneath scarred hide, its collar forged from bronze. A Roman soldier follows, his armor glinting beneath the Mediterranean sun. He doesn't speak to the animal. He doesn't need to. The two understand each other, as warriors do. Moments later, the trumpet sounds, and the Empire's most terrifying weapon is unleashed. This isn't just a story about dogs. It's a story about how Rome, master of men and machine, once bred living weapons. Beasts that fought, bled, and died for empire. This is the untold history of the Roman war dog. Long before Rome became an empire, it was a struggling city fighting for survival. The Italian peninsula was a patchwork of rivals: Etruscans in the north, Samnites in the mountains, Greek settlers to the south. Each tribe had its warriors, its weapons, and its dogs. But while others saw dogs as guards or hunting companions, Rome saw something different. Potential soldiers in early Rome, dogs were part of daily life. They guarded farms, herded livestock, and patrolled the night beside watchmen. But war changed everything. When men began fighting not for survival but for conquest, Rome's pragmatic mind turned toward nature itself. The dog, loyal, strong, trainable, could become more than a tool. It could become a weapon. The bloodline that would shape Rome's warhounds came from the rugged mountains of Epirus, in ancient Greece. There, the Molossians bred dogs that were more like lions than pets. Enormous, broad-skulled beasts that could bring down wolves, bulls, even men in armor. Alexander the Great carried these dogs with him on campaign. Ancient accounts tell of Molossian hounds trained to attack war elephants and enemy cavalry, sowing chaos where even steel failed. When Roman traders and soldiers encountered these dogs through contact with Greek colonies and Macedonian territories, they were awed. Soon, Molossian hounds were brought into Italy, and Roman breeders, as methodical as their engineers, began to experiment. Crossing the Molossians with native Italian mastiffs, they forged a new kind of creature, a dog built not for the hunt, but for the battlefield. They called them Canes Pugnaces, fighting dogs. Massive yet disciplined, powerful yet obedient, a living reflection of Rome itself. These dogs weren't pets or companions. They were living extensions of Roman will. Every muscle, every instinct was sharpened for one purpose: victory. The Romans applied to breeding the same cold precision they used in their legions. Each dog was the product of generations of selection, chosen for size, aggression, stamina, and loyalty. Archaeological digs in Pompeii and along the Via Appia reveal mosaics showing massive, muscular hounds guarding homes and soldiers' quarters. Their remains, unearthed near old kennels, tell the same story. Bones thicker than those of modern mastiffs, jaws built for crushing, bodies bred for endurance. Breeders in Roman Italy were not amateurs. They studied temperament the way a general studied tactics. Puppies were tested from birth, exposed to loud noises, metal clanging, and the scent of blood to see which ones showed courage. Those that fled or cowered were discarded. Those that stood their ground were fed, trained, and hardened. Roman kennels were organized like barracks. Dogs were grouped by age and function, some for guarding estates, others for war. Handlers fed them diets designed to build strength, meat mixed with grains, bones for calcium, even blood-soaked wine in small amounts to toughen the heart, as one writer recorded. Training was brutal and relentless. From 6 months old, the young dogs were fitted with mock armor, leather harnesses weighted with bronze studs to accustom them to battlefield gear. They were taught to charge wooden dummies, shaped like men, to respond instantly to Latin commands: stringe, sta, serva. The weak were culled, The strong were collared in bronze, engraved with their handler's name and cohort. These were not animals of chance. They were purpose-built war machines. As Rome expanded, so did its breeding programs. Each frontier adapted the dog to its needs: thicker fur for northern climates, leaner builds for desert warfare. By the height of the empire, there existed an entire military infrastructure devoted to maintaining and training these war dogs, living extensions of Rome's martial power. Imagine the field of Telamon in 225 BC. The Roman legions arrayed in perfect formation against a coalition of invading Gauls. The air is thick with dust, sweat, and fear. Before the first javelin flies, handlers step forward with their dogs. Dozens of massive hounds strain at their leashes, teeth bared, muscles trembling. At the trumpet's call, they are released, a roaring wave of living fury. They crash into the Gallic lines like a storm, biting, tearing, dragging men from their feet. Warriors swing axes and swords, but the dogs are relentless, bred to ignore pain, to hold until commanded to release. For seconds that feel like hours, chaos reigns. Then the Roman infantry surges forward, exploiting the gap their four-legged soldiers created. Accounts from ancient writers confirm their fearsome reputation. Pliny the Elder described war dogs that feared neither iron nor flame. Strabo wrote of Roman auxiliaries using massive hounds to break enemy charges in Spain. And in Britain, the native Celtic war dogs impressed the Romans so much that they were exported back to the continent, earning the name Canes Pugnaces, the British dogs of war. Beyond their physical power, their psychological effect was devastating. A trained Roman legionary might face an enemy man with courage, but a blood-crazed hound? That was something else entirely. Men dropped shields, horses bolted, lines collapsed. The dog's attack was not random, it was strategic. Handlers used whistles and gestures to direct them toward weak points in the enemy line. They could be trained to go low, hamstringing cavalry horses, or to leap high, ripping at throats. Each one was, in a sense, a guided missile of muscle and instinct, unleashed only at the perfect moment. Rome had found a weapon that combined speed, terror, and loyalty, a force of nature shaped by human will. Yet not all Roman war dogs were bred for the front line. Many served in quieter, though no less vital, roles within the legions. Some were scouts, trained to detect ambushes long before human senses could. Others guarded supply lines, camps, and granaries. Their hearing was so acute that even the faintest rustle of movement could draw a growl, alerting an entire garrison. Night marches in Roman territory were tense, silent affairs, thousands of soldiers moving in perfect rhythm through the dark. And always, at the edge of that moving column, walked the dogs. Their heads low, ears twitching, noses testing every breath of wind. They were the empire's first warning system. The bond between soldier and dog ran deep. In the barracks at Vindolanda near Hadrian's Wall, archaeologists found a dog collar inscribed with a plea: "Hold me safe, for I am a friend of the fourth cohort." A simple phrase, but it speaks volumes. These dogs were comrades. They ate from the same rations, slept beside the men they protected, and shared the same dangers. When a dog was lost in battle, soldiers mourned it as they would a fallen brother. There are countless stories, some real, others legend, of dogs defending their masters' bodies long after battle ended. One tale tells of a hound found days after the Battle of Carthage, standing guard over his dead handler, refusing food, refusing to leave, until he too perished. To those who witnessed such scenes, it was proof that loyalty itself could be forged into a weapon. In the legions, the dogs weren't just guardians. They were symbols of discipline, devotion, and the unbreakable bond between Rome's soldiers and their duty. But as with all Roman inventions, the war dog had a darker side. The same traits that made them fearsome on the battlefield made them perfect instruments of control and punishment. In Rome's brutal justice system, certain criminals and enemies of the state faced damnatio ad bestias, death by beasts. While many were thrown to lions or leopards, others were torn apart by trained war dogs. These weren't wild animals dragged from far-off lands. They were Rome's own veterans, disciplined and deadly. Seneca and other Roman writers described the horror of such scenes. Men stripped naked, thrown into the arena, the gates opening to release packs of armored dogs. It was punishment, but also spectacle, a public reminder that defiance of Rome would end in blood. Outside the arenas, war dogs served as enforcers of Roman order. In provinces like Dacia, Syria, and Judea, fortifications often kept kennels near their gates. The dogs patrolled at night, their mere presence deterring theft and rebellion. Even civilian villas adopted this tradition. The famous mosaic from Pompeii bearing the words Cave Canem, "Beware of the dog," wasn't a joke or decoration. It was a statement of power. To trespass against a Roman household was to risk meeting one of these beasts. Through fear, discipline, and example, the Romans extended their empire, and their dogs were part of that machinery of control. They represented more than muscle. They were the empire's living warning, loyal to their masters, merciless to their enemies. As the Roman appetite for blood grew, so did its need for spectacle. What had begun as training and warfare evolved into entertainment. In the amphitheaters of Rome, Capua, and Carthage, war dogs became part of elaborate games. They fought lions, bears, and leopards. They reenacted battles from Rome's conquests, storming mock forts, dragging down barbarian prisoners for cheering crowds. Some were even equipped with miniature armor, their collars gleaming with studs as they charged across the arena floor. The crowd loved them. Emperors used them to demonstrate Rome's domination over nature itself. If a beast bred by Rome could defeat the wildest animals of Africa, then surely no power could challenge the empire. Yet beneath the roar of approval lay something darker, a slow transformation from warrior to performer. What had once been an honored part of Rome's army became another instrument of entertainment, their courage commodified for applause. Still, admiration persisted. Roman poets wrote verses praising the bravery of the Canes Bellators. Sculptors carved their likenesses beside generals and gods, because even amid the bloodlust, Romans recognized in these animals something sacred: courage without ego, loyalty without condition. The arena may have reduced them to spectacle, but in the Roman imagination, the war dog remained a symbol of everything the empire admired: strength, obedience, and devotion unto death. As the centuries rolled on and the Republic transformed into empire, the war dog evolved with it. From the deserts of Egypt to the forests of Germania, they adapted to every climate and every enemy. In the east, they were deployed against Parthian cavalry, trained to attack horses, snapping at legs and throats to break mounted formations. In Germania, where the winters were harsh, they grew larger and thicker-coated, patrolling frontier forts through snow and darkness. In Africa, smaller, swifter breeds were developed to carry messages, darting between garrisons with orders tied to their collars. These regional variations show Rome's genius for logistics and adaptation. Every legion could requisition dogs suited to its theater of war, as essential to operations as siege engines or cavalry. Even emperors took pride in their war dogs. Augustus kept Molossians as symbols of authority. Hadrian maintained a personal kennel that accompanied him on campaigns. Trajan reportedly deployed canine units during the Dacian Wars. Their handlers counted and paid like any other auxiliary cohort. Rome's war dogs had ranks, rations, and duties. They were catalogued, disciplined, and, in some cases, decorated. When one fell in service, handlers buried them with tokens or collars bearing inscriptions of loyalty. They were not simply beasts of burden. They were soldiers, bound not by citizenship, but by devotion. But all weapons, no matter how mighty, meet their end. By the 3rd century CE, the empire's vast machinery began to falter. Civil wars drained resources, frontier defenses crumbled, and enemies grew more sophisticated. Armor improved. Archers learned to target the dogs before they reached the lines, and cavalry tactics evolved to neutralize them. The great kennels that once supplied Rome's armies fell silent. Without constant warfare and funding, breeding programs dwindled. The legions still kept dogs, but more as sentinels than shock troops. At the same time, a new force was spreading through the empire: Christianity. The new faith rejected blood sport and the pagan valorization of violence. The spectacles that had once glorified the war dog became symbols of cruelty, not pride. Slowly, Rome's living weapons faded into memory. Yet they did not vanish entirely. Their bloodline survived, carried into medieval Europe, where knights revived the idea of armored dogs for battle and defense. The Mastini of Italy, the Alans of France, the Great Danes of Germany, all trace their heritage to the Canes Pugnaces of Rome. Through centuries of change, their legacy endured, in the strength of our modern breeds, in the courage of service dogs, and in the unspoken bond between soldier and hound that began 2,000 years. When we think of Rome, we think of marble, legions, emperors, and eagles. But behind every banner and triumphal arch stood a quieter army, the dogs who fought and died unseen. They guarded camps through the night, charged enemy lines, and stood vigil over their fallen masters. They were loyal beyond reason, fearless beyond command. And though their names are lost, their spirit lingers in every working dog, every soldier's companion, every creature that serves without question. Because the Romans may have mastered war, but it was the dog that mastered loyalty. Imagine it now. A quiet field outside a ruined fort, grass swaying over buried walls. A fragment of bronze collar glints in the soil, its inscription faded but still legible. Faithful even unto death. That was Rome's true secret weapon. Not iron, not fire, not discipline, but the bond between man and beast. A partnership born in blood, tested in battle, and remembered in stone. For centuries they fought side by side, until the empire itself fell silent, and only the legend remained. So the next time you think of Rome, don't just picture the eagle or the sword. Remember the growl that came before the charge. Remember the silent soldier with 4 legs and a lion's heart. Because before there were empires of men, there were empires of loyalty.